2026 is the year of Linux, by the way. Seriously. That is not a joke. And whether you love Windows, hate Windows, or barely know how to install Chrome, what's happening right now affects you. Windows has recently ended support for Windows 10, causing an uproar that I have not seen in a long time. So many creators have been talking about Windows 11, why they hate Microsoft, why they hate Windows 11, and how they will not be upgrading to Windows 11. Wait, I hear you asking, what will they do if they do not upgrade to Windows 11? What other choice do they have? Well, I'm glad you asked, oh precious viewer. You may be thinking that they'll just stay on Windows 10. Some may do that, or you may think they'll switch to Mac OS, which is even less likely. What a lot of these creators are planning to do is switch to Linux. What's Linux, you ask? First of all, I'm glad you're interested. Second of all, let me explain. Whoa, let's back it up a bit. You haven't explained to them what the big problem with Windows 11 and Microsoft is yet. Oh, you're right. Allow me to explain. The problems with Windows 11 and Microsoft. Disclaimer, I am not going to go through every single problem they have, as that would take longer than all the Marvel movies combined. Microsoft has been causing everyone and their mothers pain recently, and if you've used Windows 11 or even Windows 10 for that matter in the last 10 years, you'll know what I'm talking about. The updates that happen in the middle of you doing important work where they don't even know how to give you a no button. They force you to do updates. The only option is maybe later, but what that means is after you press that a few times, you're out of luck because they're just going to do it anyways. How Windows is literally just bloatware. It's always using up 25% of your RAM. I had 16 gigabytes of RAM for the first few years of this PC, and then I upgraded to 64, and it used 25% on 16 and 64 gigabytes of RAM. What is up with that? And that's with it just being open. I'm not even doing anything. That's as soon as I turn on my computer with nothing opening when it starts up, Windows just flat out takes 25% of my RAM. Or the full page ads on Windows 11 when you're trying to install it, or the other ads that are in your home bar. Like, what is up with that? Ads on a system I paid for, on an operating system I paid for. Forcing Microsoft Edge and Copilot down your throat 24/7. Like, the only thing I've ever used Microsoft Edge for in my entire life is to download Chrome. And I'm pretty sure that browser has the most downloads for Chrome of all time, or something like that. Of how they're taking screenshots of your whole entire computer every few seconds to feed it to their AI so you can ask it, what was I doing a few minutes ago? Like, who's even using that? Not even letting you uninstall apps like the Microsoft Store. Sometimes, if you're dual booting two OSs on the same drive and you update Windows, it can nuke your other OS. Excuse me, this is my computer. Why in the world are you destroying other OSs? This is my computer. I paid for it, and yet you're just going to uninstall stuff that I don't want you to uninstall, causing me an absolute nightmare when forcing me to use a Microsoft account for my Minecraft that I bought years and years ago, but for some reason wouldn't let me use this email that I'm using on this computer for my Microsoft account because apparently that Microsoft account already exists. Yeah, no duh, that's why I'm trying to link it with it, like you told me I have to. Then I wasn't even able to play Minecraft for a long time because of that, and then what I had to do was just create an absolutely new email that I now just only use for Minecraft because Microsoft won't even let me use my own game that I bought years ago. Forcing you to use OneDrive. Putting all my files onto OneDrive randomly one day, when I've repeatedly told it, don't use OneDrive, and then I come back to my PC, half my files are on OneDrive, and now when I open up my folder, it defaults to OneDrive, but yet now my OneDrive's full, so half my files over here, half my files over here, because they just chose to use OneDrive when really I didn't even want to in the first place, and now my files are even more chaotic than they were before, because they don't know how to listen on my PC. Forcing you to use Wi-Fi when you're installing an OS because they have to make you use a Microsoft account. And for those of you saying that, oh, you can just make a local account by doing some of these commands, yeah, they're removing those too. So what are you going to do? I mean, we used to be able to, on the old computers, we used to be able to make a local account. But now, when you're making a computer, you have to be on Wi-Fi when you're installing an OS. How ridiculous is that? I saw one YouTuber talk about where his drivers needed to be updated for Wi-Fi, so he couldn't even access Wi-Fi, and yet Windows was forcing him to. Now, of course, he still had the ways to get around it, but like I said, they're removing that soon. So I don't know what they expect people to do when they have something like that happen. It's just they don't care. All they care about is getting your info. Not even letting you have access to files on this PC. Yep, that's right. It's not called my PC anymore. It's called this PC. They're trying to make the biggest amount of e-waste in a long time by requiring your PC to have a TMP 2.0 chip in your computer, a trusted platform module chip, which a lot of old PCs don't have, but if they didn't have their requirement, I'm sure their computers would be able to be just fine, or at least the majority of them would be just fine with running Windows 11. But nope, they had to have that for security reasons, but we all know they're just trying to get our data with it somehow. Like, that's all they ever know how to do anymore. So now those people with those computers can't even get Windows 11. So what do they do now? Just throw their computer away? That's certainly what Microsoft wants you to think. This is a huge problem because it leaves Windows 10 users with a few options. For those that can't update to Windows 11, you can get a Mac and go to macOS, get a new PC or a new laptop and go to Windows 11, which is what Microsoft wants you to do. Stay on an unprotected Windows 10 PC where viruses will be everywhere pretty soon because they've dropped support for that. Or, the best alternative, go to Linux, revive your old PC, and use it. Don't upgrade, and leave Windows and never come back. And for those of you that can update to Windows 11, you can do any of the above that I just listed, or of course, upgrade to Windows 11. And actually, what I've been seeing is a lot of people who can upgrade to Windows 11 don't want to because of all the reasons that I just mentioned. So which one should you do? Well, I present to you the solution: Linux. Actually, what you're referring to as Linux is actually GNU Linux. On computers, there are things called operating systems. Windows 10, Windows 11, and macOS are all operating systems. And as a coming up on 3-year Windows 11 user, I feel like all Windows 11 is good at is being an advertisement for Linux. So what's Linux? Well, Linux is another operating system. But Linux is not like the others. Linux is an open source operating system, which means no one corporation owns or controls Linux as a whole, like how Microsoft owns Windows or Apple owns macOS. But anyone can contribute to it and make their own version of Linux. These other flavors or versions of Linux are called distros. Because of this, there are a lot of great distros for everyone to try, which all behave differently, so there's definitely a perfect option for you. These distros, for the most part, are very great, except for some of the weird old versions, of course, but all the main ones are very good and can suit anyone. Well, maybe don't start with Arch. Some, if not most, of these distros use fewer resources than Windows 11, which means even on older hardware, your PC is going to be running way, way better than it did on Windows. They also have no ads, which is sad that it's a perk nowadays when really it's the bare minimum. Even though Linux is different from what you're used to today, it may be a better option for you to try that than to buy a computer like what Microsoft is wanting you to do and support their stupid decisions as a company where they don't even care about us anymore. All they care about is getting our data. Now, some of you, when I talk about Linux, are probably thinking about the old days of Linux where it's really bad and you have to use a terminal. But I'm happy to say Linux has gotten tremendously better over the past few years. In fact, a lot of these distros, you don't have to touch a terminal, and they have software stores where you can just download stuff through that, and it's a way better place now than it was a few years ago. This is especially true with gaming because of Valve. Yes, the Valve that makes Steam and my beloved Steam Deck right here. What they did was create Proton, and for those of you who don't know, Proton is a compatibility layer that allows Windows software, primarily video games, to run on Linux-based operating systems. Proton is developed by Valve in cooperation with developers from Code Weavers. It is a collection of software and libraries combined with a patched version of Wine. Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator and is a compatibility layer to allow application software and computer games developed for Microsoft Windows to run on Unix-like operating systems. Wine is free and open source software to improve performance and compatibility with Windows games. What this means for us is for a lot of games that couldn't run on Linux not too long ago, run absolutely beautifully on Linux now, and some run even better than they do on Windows. Now, there is an exception for some games. Some games like Fortnite or Valorant, their specific kernel level anti-cheats do not work on Linux. Now, there is a solution to get around this, which I can talk about in more detail in my next video, but pretty much what it is you can dual boot, which means running both Windows and Linux on your system, which means you can use Linux for most of your things, and then if you want to play Fortnite or Valorant, let's say, you can just boot into Windows to play that game and then go back to Linux like nothing ever happened. That way, you're still running Linux because it's way better, but you still have the option to play those games that you like. Now, some people in this community will say you shouldn't be playing games with kernel level anti-cheat in the first place, but that's neither here nor there. You enjoy those games, so play them if you want. But my point is, Linux is growing and improving rapidly, while Microsoft is repeatedly only showing us that they care about AI, collecting our data, and making money off of us. At the time of writing this script, Valve has just announced another Steam machine along with some other pieces of hardware. Why is this relevant to our conversation today? Well, with Microsoft making questionable decisions in general and constantly letting the Xbox fan base down, PlayStation seems to have way fewer competitors in the console space. And Nintendo doesn't even come close to counting as competition because it's so completely different than the PlayStation. Meanwhile, the Steam Deck has already become a go-to device for many people over stuff like the ROG Xbox Ally X, the ROG Ally, a Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, or even the Xbox. And this very Steam Deck right here runs on Valve's own Linux distribution called SteamOS. And look what we got out of that. Proton. Valve proved that they can make Linux work for your average gamer. With that being said, I believe this Steam machine will be a massive success. We already know it will be running SteamOS, and if it's getting Linux into the hands of that many more people, whether it's as a PC or a console, that is a massive step forward. It will be putting Linux in the hands of so many more people next year. That's right, next year. It's releasing in 2026. This will raise even more awareness of Linux, show people how great it actually is, and this will really get the ball rolling to maybe get support for stuff like Adobe software, which I know is holding a lot of people back from Linux. But as I mentioned earlier, dual booting is an option for you, and I highly encourage it. All of this is why I think 2026 will be the year of Linux. So what's the next step? What do? Well, as I said, I'm a Windows user, and in my next video, I'm going to be talking about different distros and then picking one to start daily driving and show you my experience with it. Hopefully I can show how easy it is to move to Linux, what the process looks like, and give you a better idea of the options you have. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this entertained you, educated you, or just kept your mind occupied while you're doing whatever it is you're doing right now for the past however long this video is. Please put your opinions and your experiences with Linux in the comments down below. I would really love to hear more about you guys and what your experiences with Linux or what distros you recommend I should try out. I'm currently thinking about Ubuntu or Fedora with KDE Plasma, maybe GNOME, or Linux Mint, although I'm not a huge fan of that one. But I'm probably just going to end up spinning a wheel, so let me know some other suggestions in the comments and I'll give them a consideration. I'll also put some interesting Linux related videos in the description for those of you wanting to make the next step, wanting to know more, or some other stuff, because I've been watching a lot of them and I think you guys should watch them too. I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.